Among the foods most reliably underestimated as vitamin K2 sources, aged cheese deserves particular attention, and among aged cheeses, Gouda has emerged from the research as one of the most significant dietary K2 contributors available in the Western diet. The contrast with fresh mozzarella on this specific nutrient is stark enough to be genuinely useful for anyone trying to increase dietary K2 without adopting fermented soy products like natto, which contains the highest known food concentrations of K2 but remains culturally inaccessible to much of the Western population. Vitamin K2 in aged cheese is produced by the bacteria involved in fermentation during the aging process. These bacteria synthesize menaquinones, the family of compounds that constitutes vitamin K2, as a metabolic byproduct, and those compounds accumulate in the cheese during aging. The longer and more complex the aging process, the greater the bacterial K2 synthesis. Well-aged Gouda, particularly varieties aged 18 months or longer, can contain upward of 50 micrograms of K2 per ounce. Fresh mozzarella, which undergoes minimal aging and limited bacterial fermentation, contains essentially none. The same ingredient, dairy milk, produces nutritionally divergent products through the transformation of fermentation and time. The cardiovascular research on K2 is worth understanding in some depth here because it changes how we interpret the role of aged cheese in a healthy diet. The prevailing model of dairy fat and cardiovascular risk, developed primarily in the mid-20th century, treated cheese as a food to limit due to its saturated fat content. More recent research, including the observational data from the Rotterdam study and subsequent analyses, suggests that K2-rich fermented dairy may actually be cardiovascularly protective, with the K2 directing calcium away from arterial walls and toward bones in ways that reduce atherosclerotic plaque formation. This doesn't mean unlimited aged cheese is beneficial, but it does mean the calculus is more complex than saturated fat content alone. A meaningful caution: aged cheese is calorie-dense in a way that makes portion awareness important. The K2 benefit is real at appropriate serving sizes of 1 to 2 ounces. Consuming it in large quantities daily to maximize K2 while disregarding caloric density is a poor trade-off. Additionally, aged Gouda specifically has relatively high sodium content due to the brining involved in its production, which matters for sodium-sensitive individuals managing blood pressure. And not all aged Gouda is created equal. Mass-produced versions aged for shorter periods than their labels sometimes suggest may contain less K2 than traditionally crafted long-aged varieties from European producers. The positive recommendation is to incorporate a modest portion of aged Gouda or other well-fermented aged cheeses, aged Brie, Comté, Manchego, into the diet regularly, recognizing them as meaningful contributors to dietary K2 rather than nutritional liabilities to be minimized. This reframing of aged cheese from guilty pleasure to functional food is supported by the K2 research and aligns with the observed health outcomes of populations with high fermented dairy intake.